and welcome to the podcast, where it's all about giving you the tools to transform your health one episode at a time.
I'm Dr. Yaz, and I'm a triple board certified endocrinologist and obesity specialist. And today, I was going to give you a whole introduction about me and my team's story and why I felt I really needed to start this podcast. But the reality is, you came here to learn something. So I'll try to intersperse some personal tidbits here and there while still giving you all the meat and potatoes you were waiting for. So I thought to myself on deciding on a topic for my first episode, and I thought to myself, I can't do how to rock Ramadan or fasting in general as a diabetic because, well, the month is done. And I thought to myself, well, actually, it may be the perfect timing because, well, now those who have been fasting are now eating and they'll be able to process the information so much better. And I just finished working with my clients this past month on their pre-Ramadan, during Ramadan, Eid, and post-Eid diabetic plans. So my mind is very fresh in all the details. So a little background, although I'm called Dr. Yaz, my real name is Yasmine Elamir, and believe it or not, my name has always been difficult for people to say. Whether I would be called Yasmin or Jasmine or Yasaman, it really didn't matter. People could never consistently get it the same. So back in college on my tennis team, they started calling me Yaz, and it kind of stuck, and I like it. So anyways, I work in a group practice with both my dad, my brother, and my husband, who are all physicians. So it really didn't matter if I went by my married name or my name I was born with. People would be confused about who they were talking to, especially our answering service. And honestly, the issue with my last name started even before that in residency. See, my husband, who did residency with me, is Dr. Grist, and my dad, who rounds with me at the hospital, is the original Dr. Elamir. So basically, I went by Dr. Yaz as not to confuse the nursing staff or the residents and the people who were paging overhead. Anyways, the point of that ramble is that my real name is Egyptian, and it's from my dad's side. And because my dad is from Egypt, a lot of my practice happens to be with Muslim patients who are Middle Eastern. So I work with a larger group than most people, especially endocrinologists, who deal with people who fast for an extended period of time once a year. Now, you may be telling yourself, well, why are diabetics fasting? And yes, there's definitely a risk to it, no doubt, but often it's viewed as something they should not be doing. However, who am I to tell someone how to live their life? And in addition, a lot of us fast anyway. The reality is, most of us fast here and there, whether it be intermittent fasting for health reasons or other religions. So for example, I happen to be Christian, and at my church, on Tuesdays leading up to Easter, we fast for 12 hours once a week. I also have a huge Coptic Christian community at my practice that also partakes in fasting. And now so many people are intermittent fasting for the myriad of health reasons. So I thought it's still applicable to talk about this topic even after Ramadan, so that people who observe Ramadan can prepare for the next year, and for those who intermittent fast anyway. And I think it's just such an important topic to talk about as a diabetic, so that not only can you do this safely, but you can also take advantage of it to get your diabetes in check and even get off medications or even lose some weight. So I don't just start this the day of Ramadan with my clients. What I do is I ask them the couple months before, especially if I know they're going to be fasting. I'll ask all my diabetic patients fasting for Ramadan or fasting in general, what kind of faster are you? See, I'm actually laughing because the first time I asked that, they looked at me sort of like perplexed, like, what is this woman asking me? But it's a real question with a big purpose. So, to backtrack, Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar, observed by Muslims worldwide as a month of fasting, prayer, reflection, and community. It lasts from 29 to 30 days from dawn till sunset, with the pre-dawn meal called suhoor and the evening meal to break the fast called iftar. So in the Middle East, everything shuts down during the day, so people are able to rest during the day, and then at night they go out and socialize with others. But here in the US and Canada, we're hustlers, we're still grinding. So for those fasting in the US, the diabetics have to be especially careful. So then, back to the original question asked, what kind of faster are you? I then look at my perplexed patient and then ask, are you the type that meets with your friends after breaking fast and has a night and stays up late, basically eating 2 huge meals a day, and then maybe even a little snack before bed? You, my friends, are the ones who gain weight during Ramadan. Or are you having breakfast early before the sunrise, and then you do what you normally do, but except when you break fast, you have your typical dinner, or maybe just a slightly amped up dinner? Those are the people who maybe lose a few pounds during the month. Or, and by the way, this is my favorite type, the one who comes to me and says, I want to take advantage of Ramadan, and I want to get off insulin, because I want to reverse my insulin resistance, and if I lose weight, great. You are my people. And this group of people, we prepare actually the months leading up to Ramadan to achieve their goal of getting off insulin or medications. Now, so those are the 3 main types. The one who goes out, eats a lot, maybe gains some weight during the month. The other person who's trying to maintain as normal of a schedule as possible and maybe loses a couple pounds during the month. And the person who really tries to hone in on their insulin resistance, work their diet to be nutritious to help their diabetes, and get off as much insulin or medications as possible. And these are the three main types I see in my practice and my clients. So basically, I want to discuss the strategies that keep you safe and also can help you get as close to your goals as possible during the month. So first, let's go on some education on fasting practices and provide tips with the timing of medications to prevent the typical spikes and drops in glucose we see during Ramadan and other fasts. This way, we can maintain nice energy levels, ensure effective diabetic management during the fasting period. So, big picture about the risks. When you fast for an extended period of time as a diabetic, you run the risk of hypoglycemia during the day. And for everyone fasting during Ramadan, if you get up to eat early before the sun rises for suhoor, then you really want to make sure you slam some protein with whatever you decide to eat. Why? Well, carbs will get out of your system within a couple hours. So if you go for a piece of fruit, first, your body's going to release insulin due to that high sugar surge. And that's going to drop your sugar eventually when you're fasting for a few hours. So you really want to try to have a balanced meal. Now, since later in the day, you're only going to be having one meal or maybe two meals after you break fast for iftar, you really want to make sure during suhoor you get at least 30 to 40 grams of protein in. This is going to help you maintain muscle mass and keep your metabolism going during the month. I don't really care how you get it done. It can be a piece of meat, it can be eggs, it can be zero sugar Greek yogurt. And one idea I like to offer is a protein shake, especially when you're feeling lazy. They have these awesome Fairlife protein shakes. I get mine at Costco. It has like a little cow on the front. I have no affiliation with them. Or something like this where it's a pre-made protein shake. You can get them from Costco, I think, for $30 for an 18-pack. And they're 150 calories, 30 grams of protein, and only 2 grams of carbs. So you can have something like this with maybe a large glass of water with a squeeze of lemon and a pinch of Himalayan sea salt to get those extra electrolytes in and hydration before the day gets going. If you don't want to have one of those kind of shakes, you use any protein shake really. I put in a scoop of water or almond milk to really get that protein in before the fast and stabilize your blood sugar. See, what I love about having a protein shake or some type of heavy protein source is that it won't spike your blood sugar. So you won't be needing to take insulin for it if you are on insulin or anything else for that matter. You can feel free to add in fatty foods that will sustain you like avocado or nuts depending on your appetite. But a way to at least slam some protein because I know waking up early it's hard to eat anything, especially sometimes so it'll be at like 4 a.m. So this is going to give you some energy that lasts and won't spike the blood sugar, which actually, by preventing the surge of insulin that happens when we spike our blood sugar, will actually prevent a subsequent drop. So the next thing I want to discuss is nutrient sequencing. So by having that protein followed by, say, the carbs after having a protein source or vegetables or fat, this is nutrient sequencing, which prevents a spike of blood sugar and subsequent drops in blood sugar. And this concept goes for diabetes in general. It's always a good idea to nutrient sequence. So now I want to transition to my clients who are focused on just getting off the insulin and using this fast to get off medications. See, good for you. These tips are also great to try with your doctor, or if you are a doctor here and are following this page, these are some tips for you to try with your patients if you don't work with this population as often. So now, the first thing to consider is, were you taking your medications in the morning? The first thing you want to consider is, say you're on insulin, then you want to cut back on the insulin that you were normally about to do. And you talk about this with your provider based on your prior measurements. See, most of the guidelines recommend examine your patterns and discuss it with your doctor to see how much to lower the insulin. So, big picture, with insulin, there's usually a long-acting insulin that lasts all day and a short-acting insulin. So the purpose of the long-acting, like I said, is to bring the overall level down for your general needs. And the short-acting is to prevent the spike of glucose that happens with a meal. So meaning that short-acting insulin is the insulin you take before. And I'm purposely saying the insulin you take before, not after a meal. Because when you take it after, that's often when we see hypoglycemia because the food has already been going through the system. And then you take insulin and there's nothing for it to kind of eat up. So we see this all too often. And most of the reason people take it after the meal is they're afraid of the sugar dropping, usually because they're on too aggressive of a dose. Or they're only on an only carb kind of diet where the carbs get out of the system quickly, but the insulin is still in their system. But anyways, we'll talk more about timing of insulin in another episode. So just remember, there's a long-acting insulin bringing the general number down for your general needs, and then a short-acting insulin that's going to prevent the spike of sugar when you eat. So for my patients who are fasting, who stick with protein and fat in the morning during suhoor, you can actually consider holding all mealtime insulin throughout the day, and only carefully consider mealtime insulin at night. See, you may want to lower your long-acting insulin as well. I usually start with at least 20% off for my patients, but this is definitely based on prior readings, and you definitely should do this with your doctor to decide how much of the long-acting insulin or short-acting insulin to drop. But for me, with my clients, generally, if they were already in good standing to start, I at least lower the long-acting 20%, and if they protein sequence and really keep the carbs low for suhoor, I'll stop the mealtime insulin altogether. Now, say you were one of of my champs with the goal of reducing the insulin or even getting off the insulin. So say you think it's crazy to get insulin in a month. Well, I want to throw a plug here about gastric sleeve or the gastric bypass surgery. So many people, when they get these surgeries, the first couple days in the hospital get off insulin like this. And the reason is because if you don't eat, you don't need insulin, right? So for those who are skeptical, understand that people do surgeries forever have been getting off insulin. So my clients will tell you, we mentally prepare for this even sometimes months prior to optimize your insulin sensitivity the best we can with natural practices and other medications prior to getting off the insulin during Ramadan. This is especially true for my clients who are starting on over 200 units of insulin a day. The goal here in Ramadan is if you're starting on a lower dose, it'll be easier to first stop the short-acting insulin and then the long-acting insulin. So I'll tell you a little bit of the strategy on how we do this, and you and your doctor maybe can work on this together. So I have them examine their glucose levels, and basically we try to make it that when they eat, the glucose does not spike over 30 points before the next meal. So meaning if they break their fast during iftar, if they're going to have another snack that night or later, they'll look and see, did my sugar stay above 30 where it was? And if it stayed within that 30 range, we know that we can easily lower the mealtime insulin down about 20%. And then we'll next day look at the exact same pattern and say, hey, did the insulin cover me? And if it did, great, let's lower it 20% more. And we'll keep doing this every few days to see if we can get off the mealtime insulin. We apply a very similar principle to getting the long-acting insulin off. Now here we look at the fasting sugar, which in theory could be right before iftar or actually before suhoor in the morning. So we look to see, are we in the proper range? And if we are on the lower to medium normal range, so normal range is 80 to 130, so say we're at like say 110, 115, so we have a little wiggle room. I'll lower that long-acting insulin 20%, and then my patients will try to optimize their nutrition and their macros and their micronutrient deficiencies and their gut health to keep this going. So then the next morning we'll say, okay, you took off 20% of the long-acting insulin, and in the morning, are we still good? And if we are, we keep going. And that's basically what we keep doing until it's off. Now, when I say what we do if, say, it doesn't work, so say we go in the morning, we lowered the insulin, and it's above 130 at 140. So then we'll talk about what were the macros the day before? How much sugar did we have? Or are we missing any micronutrients that help you optimize glucose? Or how's our gut health? Is our bowel movements regular? These are the kind of things we look at to look at it holistically from a true functional nutrition kind of standpoint to make sure we are optimizing you to get that insulin off. Now, let's discuss breaking fast the best way. So often I have my clients either try to eat maybe a piece of meat or have a quick protein water, as I like to call it, which is basically just a scoop of protein powder and water prior to enjoying the festivities for the night. See, like I discussed with suhoor, this is a great time also to have a big glass of water to get you hydrated again. And again, discuss this with your doctor, but you can consider a pinch of Himalayan sea salt, which has a lot of minerals and can get your electrolytes balanced again, and lemon to get things moving. And when I say get things moving, I mean by having a big glass of water, you can encourage a bowel movement since you've been fasting for 12 hours. We also, again, focus on the nutrient sequencing. So we had that protein first and, prioritizing protein and vegetables and fat before the carbohydrates, which require the most insulin. So a common tradition is to break fast with a date at iftar. However, we know this will spike the glucose so quickly. So instead what I'll do is I'll have them have water and a protein water or a piece of meat, and then they'll go for that date if they really want it. Now, for those who are not trying to lower your sugar or your medications, here are just some considerations for you to keep things safe. So if you're on something like Jardiance or Farxiga or Steglatro, which are SGLT2 inhibitors, this class allows you to pee out the sugar you eat. See, with that though also comes a lot of fluid. So you'd want to maybe take this at night at iftar. So that way you're not peeing all day and getting dehydrated with that medication. Also, it works best when you take it before the meal, and it only usually lasts about 12 hours. So again, if you took it in the morning, it wouldn't really be as useful as you taking it at night. So this is one medication I tell people to kind of move. I also advise them to do the same things with their other medications like metformin or sulfonylureas like glipizide, glimepiride. Although I'll be honest, I seldom put patients on these medications, the sulfonylurea class, as it can contribute to insulin resistance by making you secrete more insulin, and also can cause hypoglycemia. But if you are on one of those medications, consider rearranging the timing and obviously discussing this with your doctor. So if you're someone who's trying to lower the amount of medications you're on, you can apply the same principles I told you with the insulin with your medications. Look at your fasting glucose, meaning the glucose right before you're about to eat after an extended period of time, or look at your post-meal glucose and make sure you haven't spiked too much and you're in the normal ranges. And as long as you are, keep working those macronutrients and nutrient sequencing to be able to get off those medications by first lowering the dose and then stopping the medication altogether. So I want you to work with this diligently with your primary care provider or endocrinologist, because when you work really closely and do this every couple of days, you really can get amazing results. So I know we went over all the different types of fasters, but regardless of what kind of faster you are, as a diabetic, consider cutting back on those refined carbs and juices and loading up on green vegetables, proteins, and healthy fats, and definitely nutrient sequence if you are going to have something a little more sinister. So I want to take a moment and discuss for those fasting who are in other religious groups, like say Coptic Christians who are basically almost vegan when they fast, I would consider plant-based protein options like Orgain, which is a plant-based protein, or another brand I know is Tone It Up, and they use pea protein to make their protein shakes. There's a lot of them out there, but basically you want to focus on ones that are low carb, and if you are vegan, looking at a plant-based protein. Because those brands taste good, and you can still nutrient sequence, which will make being a vegan a lot easier because often that's a higher carb diet. Now, the last part of this segment is working out. Yes, during the month, you may want to work out or move, and it's still very important to get that in. However, everyone's body reacts differently to fasting, so find what works for you and stick with it. This advice applies to the intensity and the time of your workouts. So with this in mind, if you're new to exercising during Ramadan, you may want to try one or more of the following. So if you exercise after suhoor, i.e. after the sunrise meal, this may be kind of a hard one to do because you'll be fueled and hydrated prior, but you won't be able to rehydrate or fuel after until iftar. And you may even feel lethargic, not eating or drinking after exercise. Another option is exercising after you break your fast. So you'll feel fueled and hydrated, and you can still eat and drink more after your workout if you need to. So you may have to wait a little bit for the food to settle, and you may have to eat less in the evening to accommodate the workout. However, this may be one of your safest options. The only thing I'd caution is not doing too much of a high-intensity workout, because if you do, it's kind of hard to sleep after. So exercising during Ramadan has a lot of, conflicting information out there. However, there is some research that suggests that during episodes of fasting, glycogen stores can be emptied. And this means your body actually starts to burn fat. And there's also research suggesting that fasting has potential health benefits when it comes to reducing your diabetes risk, lowering blood pressure, and maintaining muscle mass. Now, should you prioritize weights or cardio? See, the exact type of exercise you choose to do during Ramadan will depend on your goals and how you feel when you're fasting. But whatever you choose, start with low intensity than you normally would, especially if you're new to exercising while fasting. So, to wrap up this episode of The Wellness Prescription, my main script for you I have is this, and that is to discuss this with your doctor and really prep mentally for fasting, especially as a diabetic. And don't do it the first day you're about to do it. Prep even the month or two before, especially when you're trying to get off insulin or other medications. You want the right plan and the right coach during this time to shoot your results through the roof in the best way. And remember, the same strategies here can be applied to intermittent fasting to improve your insulin resistance, not just Ramadan. So make sure to hydrate, drink plenty of water, and really focus on nutrient sequencing and cutting down on those refined carbs and sugar that can cause the spikes and drops in your blood glucose. Okay, that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next.